Okay.
Let me get back there.
Give us just a second here. Okay, so we are recording. Yes. Okay. And I am going to do one other thing. And that is put this on speaker view if it's recording from mine. And I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves if that hasn't been done already, and to stop. You don't need to stop your video, but do mute yourself, please. So, good evening and welcome to everyone in all of our time frames. I'm Barbara Klein, currently the Action Chair of the League in Rogue Valley, Oregon. I also participate on the Oregon League Action Committee and have been serving on the National Popular Vote Task Force for LWVUS. Paula Lee, our co-host, is with the Sacramento, California League, where she serves as Advocacy Director and soon to be incoming president, I think, again. Additionally, she is VP and Legislative Director for CFER, Californians for Electoral Reform. I also want to thank Marsha Watson from Minnesota, who I did see come in, and who's going to help out watching the chat box tonight. Okay. This meeting is sponsored by Sacramento County League, Lands of the Maidu and Miwok tribes, and the League of Women Voters, Rogue Valley, Oregon, Lands of the Takelma and Shasta people. Our meetings or conversations that we've had are a grassroots effort by and for League members, especially interested in alternative election reforms and particularly ranked choice voting. If you have League members that were interested in this or who were not on this invitation list, please email either Paula or me. And I think that Paul might put our addresses in the chat, perhaps, but you do already have them. Tonight's theme is ranked choice voting messaging. And let me explain that this is not RCV 101, which would go into the workings of ranked choice voting. Such primers are available in many places. A quick Google search will find many videos and resources online. Most of the registrants here tonight on the meeting understand the details of ranked choice voting. For those of you who are still just catching up, this is still an excellent introduction for you and how to share with others. Often League members and other RCV enthusiasts become so enchanted with the technical side of RCV that we concentrate on that and not the important points for voters. And I know that all too well. Paul and I often discuss that we realize that advocacy for ranked choice voting entails selling the sizzle and not the steak, a marketing term many of you may be aware of. Tonight, we want to make sure you understand the sizzle. The League members with us tonight are well versed in the difference. They are going to share with you what they have done in their communities, or in other words, how to sell the sizzle. And just so that everyone understands our agenda, I will briefly introduce our speakers individually and hope they say a little bit more about themselves. And they'll take about 5 minutes to talk about their work and messaging for RCV. Later, we will take questions mostly from the chat or those sent in early. If we have any remaining time, we will open it up to questions. But we do have a lot of people on the call, and so we would like to have this more of a conversation. We also need to keep questions succinct. We don't want to cut anyone off, and we want to keep a strict time frame if we can to respect everybody's time. Now onto the conversation with our impressive speakers. The order of speakers this evening is simply to offer us variety. And before we start, I want to ensure all of our speakers that if we were in person and weren't muted, we would all be clapping for them. So I just want them to know that. First up is Diane Burroughs, who is the co-president of LWV New York City. And last year, NYC made a big splash with, New York City, sorry, I am from New York, made a big splash with ranked choice voting. And Diane is here to talk about the league's part and how they handled voter education.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I think that the message that I would really relate to everybody is we kept it simple. We kept it simple. We kept it straightforward. I think the best help I had was from with our group of interns who, when I was working with them on explaining to them the intricacies of ranked choice voting, one of our interns said to me, "Oh, it's like when you go into CVS to buy toothpaste and the brand that you like isn't on sale, but the other brand is just as good. And so you buy that brand." And I thought, that's part of this messaging, is we use ranked choice voting every day of our lives. We all make decisions based on what can I live with? What are the choices that I have when I'm buying toothpaste or when I'm going out for pizza with a group of friends and one friend wants mushrooms and the other friend wants pepperoni. And we agree that we can have choices. So I think the first lesson is keep it simple to the point of make it real for people from their own lives and their own experiences. So that's number one. The second thing is to really drive home the messaging that we have one vote in each of these races. And our one vote, and this is an important sort of a metaphor, and I think metaphors are really an important part of the messaging. And the metaphor here is, I have one vote and my ballot is on the table. And my ballot can move from my first choice to my second choice to my third choice. It's only one vote. But because I have these choices, my vote and therefore my voice stays on the table longer. And I think that's a really important message to get across to folks, is that's what keeps your voice active. If you only choose one choice in a ranked choice voting opportunity, if your one choice is eliminated, your voice is not going to be heard anymore. Your ballot is now off the table. So I think that's an important piece of the messaging. The other important piece of the messaging is that we're not marrying the candidate. We are working with a candidate who we can live with. And that's the other part of the messaging that we used. If I can live with this candidate as my elected official, I can rank this candidate. I'm not going to rank a candidate who I can't live with. So I would say those three things, the idea of the metaphor of it's everyday life, the metaphor of it's my ballot on the table, and the metaphor of I don't have to live with this person. I mean, I don't have to marry this person. I just have to be able to live with this person in a way that will satisfy the needs that I have as a voter, and that this person or these people will represent my interests.
That's terrific. And I don't think I'm ever going to buy toothpaste again when I don't think of ranked choice voting. So that's terrific, Diane. Thank you. Next is Preston Jordan, who is from the local league of Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville, California. And for my friends in the East, I just want to tell you that I actually do know how to say Albany, because I am from the East, but they do things strangely in California. And so that's why I am pronouncing it their way. Preston also has some more prestigious credentials in that he is the mayor of Albany, California. Preston ran one of our rarest types of ranked choice voting campaigns, promoting a proportional type of ranked choice voting. So Preston, take it away.
Thanks so much, Barbara. It's funny to hear. There's only 30 Albanese in the country, or Albanese, depending on how you pronounce it. So I'm sure there's maybe not quite that many pronunciations, but probably nothing short of 5 or 6. Thank you, everybody, for attending. In terms of messaging, so I did champion for, gosh, I don't know, 14 years, proportional ranked choice voting. We're finally about to use it for the first time this November. So in terms of messaging, messaging to electeds was never particularly effective, so I can't really speak to that. I tell you what doesn't work, but we ultimately had to go to initiative. So the messaging that I can convey that was successful was messaging to other people who became activists and decided that we should go for initiative. I was too frightened to ever contemplate that myself. They decided, let's go for it, so we went for it. And I would say the shorthand of that is that for proportional ranked choice, it elects representation in proportion to use the voters. Puts the voters at the center. Unlike plurality at large, sometimes it's block voting. We'll vote for N, which allows the largest group of voters perspective to get all the representation and everybody else to get no representation. And would often say in Albany, that's not very neighborly. So we're a city, 20,000 people, but we have the conceit of thinking of ourselves as a town, not necessarily in the East Coast or even a village. And so that was rhetoric that we're well here is like, okay, you get all the representation, but then your neighbor doesn't get any. The other piece of this that was important to people choosing to go for ranked choice at large or proportional ranked choice was finding that cities of this size that had transitioned to single member districts, which is happening to a lot of cities in California, including cities as small as Albany and smaller than Albany, and not necessarily not for good reasons, is a massive increase in uncontested elections. So cities that don't have term limits, that were at large, that are similar size in terms of electorate, had about 1 out of 50 of their elections uncontested. Once they converted to single member districts, they had 1 out of 3 elections uncontested. One can hypothesize why that is, but that really frightened people here and made them real activists to go for ranked choice at large. In terms of talking to and recruiting not activists, but we ran an initiative. So that's my other base of sort of messaging knowledge. And we started out from, I would say, a single really impactful email from the Santa Clara campaign, which I won't really go into, but it basically said, going door to door, you just keep it super, super simple. It works really, really well. And so we're fortunate to be next to Berkeley, which used ranked choice voting for single seat. And so I collected about 300 signatures going door to door. And of the doors that opened, got a signature from, out of every 10 doors that opened, got a signature from 7. So pretty amazing right there. Part of that is, again, we're next to Berkeley. That's part of the reason I decided to go for proportional ranked choice here, which is sort of the next step. Of that group that did sign, about half of them said, where do I sign? Because they already knew about it. So, we were in a fortunate position. The other half said, oh, what's that? Flip the petition board around, have a blow up of a ballot. Oh, well, it's just a method where you can, indicate your first choice candidate, second choice candidate, third choice candidate. And you don't have to think about lesser of 2 evils anymore. Oh, okay, great. Where do I sign? That was it. Just that simple. Basically, nobody asked about the counting at all, which it's kind of grateful for it, because counting in proportional ranked choice is a bit more complicated, as you may know, on single seat. But as far as messaging on single seat, and where I would start out with multi-seat for those very, very few that I was willing to go there with, I find that the way it's represented in the media is really a disservice. So I'll talk about, oh, well, they count the first choice votes, and then, if somebody doesn't make it, then they count their second choice votes. And so people come away with the idea that it's a method called Borda, where each of those choices that you make has a certain weight to it. People even like a colleague of mine, a research colleague of mine, I'm a scientific researcher, who's a professor at University of the Pacific and a researcher where I work at Lawrenceburg National Lab. He thought it was a Borda vote. He didn't know the term Borda, but when I spoke to him, he sort of had intuited that's what it was. And so this whole idea of first choice, second choice, third choice vote is a real disservice. What I say to people is just, it's just a series of runoff elections. You just don't have to go back to the polls over and over again. You can basically, you're telling the election officials, well, if my first choice candidate, if my votes were for a candidate gets knocked out in one of the rounds, this is where I want my vote to go to in the next runoff. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. So I think with that, I'll leave it there. Hopefully some of that was helpful, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. It's very helpful and an unusual situation that I think we hope there's going to be more of soon. Next is Vilya Johnson, and Vilya is from Sarasota County League in Florida. Her road is a bit more bumpy, I would say, than some of the areas we will discuss tonight. So it's great having her here to discuss what she has done.
Thank you, Barbara. And if you could make me co-host too, that'd be great. Thank you. I'm Vilya Johnson, and I'm just ending a term on the board of the League in Sarasota County, where I also lead the action teams for advocacy and election reform. And I also serve on the board of Rank My Vote Florida, where I also lead the Speakers Bureau. So busy. I'm going to actually address how we do things in Florida from two different aspects, because we really have two different audiences. First of all, the Florida State League does not have a position on ranked choice voting, and that's because the board feels that they do not have enough information and that the local chapters do not have enough information. So on their advice, I created an educational presentation that I'm going forth to spread the word across the land to all the local chapters, with the goal of having a resolution at the next state conference, which would be in 2023. So I'm just going to quickly show you a just very brief couple of things there. The primary mission or the primary focus that I use there is to talk about more choice and more voice and the improvement in representation for women and people of color. So I do go ahead and talk about problems with the plurality system, what is ranked choice voting, but I really focus on those benefits. And I even do have, at the request of the president of the State League, we also added a whole section about what are the concerns and objections, because we had to have a very balanced presentation, that it could not be advocacy because she's not prepared to advocate yet. But I have to say that the response has been terrific. First of all, she did approve it for the State Speakers Bureau. So it has been added to the Speakers Bureau, and I've done the presentation to probably 6 local chapters, and they've already started going out into the community to give the presentation. So that's been very exciting, that it's already getting some momentum. But as you all know, here in Florida, it's not enough to just talk to the league, right? Because we have this whole other audience. We have a governor and a legislature. You know, the governor is running for president in 2024, so he's padding his credentials. The legislature also is extreme right and ready to do whatever he tells them. So every legislative session, they are passing anti-voter legislation right and left. The league actually just scored a big victory from a 2020 bill that they passed, where the judge gave a 288-page reply to the lawsuit that was filed by the League of Florida. and actually said that the league or that the Florida legislature will now have to have review for 10 years of every election law that they pass because there's clear bias and voter repression. So that was a big win for the Florida League. However, they also just signed another bill last month, and the governor hasn't signed it yet, but we expect that any day. And one of the lines in the bill is that it prohibits ranked choice voting in Florida. Now, why? As we lobbied all the legislators, none of them had a clue what ranked choice voting was. And I don't believe Governor DeSantis even knows what it is, but he said that he saw that it happened in New York. And if it happens in New York, it's not going to happen in Florida. So that was the rationale behind prohibiting ranked choice voting for Florida. So again, we do expect him to sign it. We expect that there may well be a lawsuit, not so much related to ranked choice voting, but to many of the other terrible aspects of the bill. So who knows what'll ever happen or how long that'll go on. But obviously now we had to completely pivot in our message and our education to these legislators who aren't listening to voters particularly. So we have now I'm speaking really as Rank My Vote Florida, because we are undertaking a whole movement to try to combat that decision. And so completely different type of messaging now, right, to talk to that audience. So I'll show you a little bit about what I'm doing there. We really decided to become very fundamental to speak that conservative language. And we went back to the framers of the Constitution and what did they have to say about it? So even though RCV didn't exist 250 years ago, constitutional scholars agree on basic points about elections and candidates. So what do the framers of the Constitution want? Okay, they want, here are some points of what they want. The representatives should have broad and deep support. Obviously, RCV supports a candidate with the broadest appeal who would also get a second or third vote, demonstrating depth. Secondly, RCV encourages voters to learn more about other candidates beyond their first choice. And then thirdly, no framer of the Constitution ever implied that strategic voting or even a simple plurality vote was good. Majority support was always implied. So that RCV most closely resembles the intent, especially with multiple candidates like we have today. And we even pulled a quote from the Federalist Papers, let's see if I can find that, about government being founded on a mix of proportional and equal representation. I mean, that's how fundamental and conservative we're trying to get in our messaging. And then we also touch on the hot buttons of majority rule and saves taxpayers money. Now, another idea a very clever idea, I think, that one of our interns came up with was to approach conservative candidates who are running in the August election and offer them push polls that they can give to, and we would actually come and work at their events and give push polls to their supporters to see how the supporters rank the values that they want their candidates to represent. And so we're creating these push polls now to provide to the conservative candidates so the candidates and the voters can become familiar with how easy and effective ranked choice voting is. So let's see. So we really have learned a very hard lesson about how we have to speak to the conservative audience in their language. And instead of just trying to convince them that we're right and you're wrong or whatever, that we really have to persuade them using their own language. And we're just starting this, just launching it. And so I don't have any results for you, but that's the approach we're taking.
Whew. Thanks, Vilya. When I said it was a bumpy road, I think I was understating it. Okay. Sean Dugar is a well-known name for big fans of ranked choice voting. He's with the League of Oakland in California, but he's worked on both the New York City campaign and that of DC. We also appreciate that he has wonderful boots on the ground experience. And I hope that everybody got a chance to finally take his poll that was on ice cream, ranked choice voting poll that was in the chat. So you're on, Sean, and
I'm just about.
Are you ready for me?
I think that you have him as a co-host.
While Paula is working
Good.
her magic. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. So I have had the privilege of working in many places on ranked choice voting. I was an early supporter of ranked choice voting, of the campaign for ranked choice voting in Oakland. I've run ranked choice candidate campaigns and have been a ranked choice voter myself for over a decade. So that on the ground experience led me to New York, where I led the public education campaign there in New York City, where we built a coalition of over 750 organizations that reached over 3 million New Yorkers in 13 different languages in the middle of the pandemic. So we actually only had about a month of talking face to face with people during that process. So many lessons learned. I will echo what other panelists have said. I call it KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And so you want to make sure that you are talking in the plainest of terms to people about ranked choice voting. Also, language access matters. How you talk to people about ranked choice voting who are from the Latino community is very different than how you're talking to people who are English speakers. There's been some great work done by More Equitable Democracy and Democracy Rising. They have done a series of focus groups on specifically on how to speak to different communities. So whether it's the Mandarin speaking community or Vietnamese community, Spanish speaking communities, kind of what their core values are and how you talk to them about issues like ranked choice voting. One of the key findings there was that if you're talking to a Hispanic community or the Hispanic community, that they care much more about community than individuals. So, excuse me.
Sean, could I interrupt
Yes.
you just for a second and ask everybody, please mute yourself other than Sean, because we are having some background noise. So if you would please mute yourself, we'd all appreciate it. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. So they found that if you're talking to specifically Spanish-speaking voters, but more largely or widely the Latino community, often in ranked choice voting, we talk about how it gives an individual more voice in the process. Their concern is about community. So how does it give the community more of a say versus the individual voter? So all of that, they have toolkits and great messaging on their websites. Again, that's More Equitable Democracy and Democracy Rising. The other thing I wanted to share with you all that we found in New York is that it's very important to not just explain ranked choice voting, but to show ranked choice voting. So I am going to take a moment to share the results of that mock election that hopefully you all just completed. Give me one moment. So this is a website called rankedvote.co. If you are in a place where there is an active campaign for ranked choice voting, they offer their platform for free. If you are in a place where there is not an active campaign, it is a $60 a month, but you can run as many mock elections as you want. And it's a great way to share it on social media, or it has a plugin so you can plug it in on your website. And it's just a great way of showing ranked choice voting. So here we see the mock election was favorite ice cream flavor. This is one we've had ongoing for a while. So there are 166 people who voted, and you see the ranking process. And it allows you to go through the round by rounds and see the lowest vote getter eliminated and where their votes are redistributed to. Now this is set up for the New York model, but they also have kind of the Alaska model and other formats of ranked choice voting that you can use. But it allows you to go through the step-by-step and see the rounds conducted. It also gives you very good descriptions on what a round means, what it takes to win, how the eliminations happen, what are exhausted votes, and then it also shows you kind of the number breakdown for the rankings. This is something we used in all of the nearly 1,000 presentations we did in New York City, and voters got it. Once they were able to do it, once they were able to touch it, feel it, see it, they get it. And this was crucial to our success and is key to what we're doing in Washington, D.C. with More Voice DC there, and in California with the California Ranked Choice Voting Coalition. The last thing I will share in terms of visuals, let's see. Great, you are still able to see my screen. So this is a post or a handbill we created in New York City. Again, something very graphic that shows the ballot and the ranking process, but also provides on the back the do's and don'ts. The Center for Civic Design has created a toolkit of the do's and don'ts that you should display in talking about ranked choice voting. Again, that's the Center for Civic Design. They've done dozens of studies and focus groups and really have provided a great insight into how you show voters what ranked choice voting is. Lastly, just very quickly, one thing I do want to bring to people's attention is often with ranked choice voting, we talk about more voice and more choice. A recommendation that I've made to a number of cities recently is that we stop using the phrase choice as kind of the headline or one of our key talking points, only because in the upcoming months, it is likely that the Supreme Court will reconsider Roe v. Wade. And for a lot of communities, when we're going to them and talking about choice, they will automatically shut down because they think you're coming to them about an entirely different issue than what we're focused on. So with that, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Sean. Those were great points, and loved the handout. And I love that they showed what was done wrong, because I'm convinced they must have done something wrong on the ice cream one as well, because my favorite ice cream didn't win. Be that as it may. Next is Donna Limper, who I hope I said that right, Donna.
Sure.
Good. who Paula has awaited with bated breath because Donna is from the League in Roseville, Bloomington, Illinois, and she's going to tell us about their Rank Your Beer project. Hence why Paul is so interested, and actually me too. We thank Donna for sharing this information, and she also offered to share a lot of the materials with others too, if you're interested at a later date. So there you go, Donna.
All right. Hi, I'm Donna Limper. I'm from the League of Women Voters of Roselle, Bloomingdale, in Illinois. We decided to begin not with a presentation, but with an event. So we chose a Rank Your Beer event at a local craft brewery. You'll see the image on the right is the flyer we used, and it says Rank Your Beer. We held it in September in the evening at this local craft brewery that's very popular in our area. We ended up doing it as a fundraiser for our league. So we charged $25, which included one flight of 4 beers plus appetizers. Our costs were $15, so we made $10 a person. So it was in our fall kickoff. So we're all interested in the movement for ranked choice voting, but really we need to sell it, not only to the public, but also to our local officials. And beyond that, we also need to think about ensuring its smooth and successful implementation in elections where it matters and is appropriate. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. This is, we put together a Rank Your Beer toolkit for any of you that would be interested in doing something like this. It includes a complete event plan, which has a very simple description of what ranked choice voting is, or ranked voting, if we want to eliminate the word choice. The speakers we used Fair Vote speakers. We have a Fair Vote Illinois that's very active. And complete logistics of the materials we used, how we designed everything, our complete costs and profit. Again, you don't have to make a profit. You could probably get wider attendance if you lowered the cost. And then the results. In terms of publicity, we share our event flyer, which was on the previous slide. We made a small event postcard, which we emailed to all of our members and people on our email list. And then we had a press release, which resulted in a really nice article in our local paper. We also include our official ballot design for the beer event, as well as a pros and cons article, because we did an informal talk and then the experience. And so it generated a lot of questions and we needed to be able to answer all of the questions. So by having everyone in the league read this pros and cons article, they could have lots of different conversations with people at this very informal gathering. The one thing I want to talk about in the pros and cons article is that ranked choice voting, in terms of its implementation, it requires more voter education, and that's where the league comes in. And that's why these experiences are very important in educating voters on how to fill out the ballots. It does require more work for election clerks and volunteers. So we invited our election clerk and we invited their staff. We have to educate people that it will result in longer wait times for election results. And that I know that they're, longer term, they're touting that this could be cost savings, but initially there usually aren't cost savings. So I'm always very hesitant about that messaging because it requires, new ballot counting equipment or software, and the public education piece of it usually is costing, more. So, in the first year or two, it doesn't save money. So I'm real careful about saying that. Next thing, you can really rank anything to educate voters and create a little sizzle for the state. We used beer for our first event, but we're going to use wine. So those are our two adult choices. We use beer and we use wine. We also have a wonderful local winery. At our family-friendly events, when we do tabling in the summer at all the parades and things like that, we use rank your cookies, rank your candy, and rank your ice cream. We don't actually, and we our message is it's so simple, a kid can do it. So we don't go for the adults. We grab the kids. We go out behind the booth and we say to the kid, would you like to vote for your favorite cookie? And the parents are like, no, we don't want to come to your booth. And the kids are like, yes, we want to rank your favorite cookies. And so we grab them. And while one of us is helping the kid, make his ballot, the other one is talking to the adult. After they vote, we give them a future voter sticker, and it tends to be really popular with the kids that come to our booth. And when the parents hear about it, they've never heard about it before. So it's their first introduction. They're like, oh, that's interesting, So, I find that really effective for the family-friendly events. This is a picture of our ballot. And this is the messaging we used on the simple ballot at the Rank Your Beer event. It says you can rank candidates in order of preference. And then just like Sean talked about, we tell them how to do it in the rows and the columns. You can still vote for one candidate if you prefer. However, ranking out other candidates does not harm your first choice. So we had 4 different beers. We had a Oktoberfest Lager, a Hazy American Pale Ale, Berliner Weiss, and Eleanor Porter. And so, that was our ballot. We did offer a, I'm going to go to the next slide. We did offer a flyer where they could rank it with a QR code, but everyone wanted to use the paper flyer, which was interesting. So we had both there. So I had to then enter the paper ballots. So I expected more people to use the QR code and do it. So I'd be prepared that if people want to use the paper ballot, you need enough people to actually enter the results. One caveat is that you want to choose your candidates carefully and have at least 4 candidates. Excuse me. When we did the Rank Your Cookies, we had only 3 candidates, and Oreos were so popular, we had only 1 round. And I noticed in Sean's example, you had only 1 round because chocolate won on the first round. So when you're designing your event, whether it's cookies, candy, beer, or wine, you want the candidates to be fairly close in popularity, or you won't demonstrate the multiple rounds. We learned that, the hard way. So you want to be real careful with choosing the candidates. If I were going to do a cookies, I did some research on the most popular cookies in Illinois, and I would pick then Oreos, Chips Ahoy, Keebler Fun Strips, and Girl Scout Thin Mints in order to have a closer race and demonstrate multiple rounds. Our Rank Your Beer event was very successful. We had 32 people attending at the height of the pandemic. We had scheduled the event and then, our numbers got really bad where we were. So we had a bunch of people signed up, but 32 people actually come, which was actually okay. We still got the publicity. In terms of our league expansion, 3 people took our membership brochures coming to the event. We added 10 new people to our email list, including the waitresses. The waitresses were not politically involved, but after they were serving the beer, they're like, this is so interesting. Can we get on your mailing list? One attendee moved up our volunteer ladder because we made sure to have a whole volunteer opportunities list there, because again, this is an informal event where we're milling around. Excuse me. In terms of our publicity, as I mentioned before, we had a really nice write-up in our local paper. Fair Vote, who was our speaker, sent information on the event to their members, and they're going to be duplicating the event at a lot of their events. And Pollyanna, the brewery, also publicized the event. In terms of our advocacy, we had 2 state representatives attend. We invited them separately. We had 1 Democrat attend, 1 Republican. I sat with the Republican because, of course, he wanted to see, how is this going to work? Am I going to win with this method, basically, And so I think they both went away kind of positive about it. We actually made about $400 in profit. So I do want to say that if you look here at our results, we were successful in having 3 rounds. And it did change the results of the race. So after the first round, Eleanor Porter won. But after you eliminated the blueberry and the Oktoberfest lager, those votes transferred to the hazy American pale ale, and that pushed that over the top. So it was a perfect demonstration.
Mm.
So
Sounds
we
like
had
a-
3 rounds, and it changed the results of the first round. Some people, when they initiate ranked choice voting, some municipalities have then gotten rid of it because after a number of elections, they found out that, hey, it didn't change the first round. Whoever won in the first round won after multiple rounds. So the added expense, the added education, didn't really, ranked choice voting didn't really change the outcomes of the race.
Mm.
So you do want to design carefully so that you're showing, is this going to change an outcome of a race? It has to be a close election. And by the way, the blueberry beer was absolutely nasty. It got eliminated in the first round. Only 5 people voted for it. And so that's all I'm going to say. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Donna. That was pretty amazing. I wish I had been there for the beer. As they say, last but not least, and by all means, that's the case here, is Kit Mulliman from the League of Women Voters, Bellingham, Whatcom County in the state of Washington. There's been an incredible amount of work coming out of Washington on ranked choice voting and proportional ranked choice voting, and the League is playing a big part. So I'm hoping that Kit can give us a little bit more info here.
Thanks, Barbara. Thanks for holding this. This is really fun to hear about the different things people are going through and all over the country. So if I could share my screen a little, that would be helpful. I'm Kit Mulliman. I wasn't very politically active until a few years back. I noticed how toxic national politics was, and it was really upsetting, so that I wasn't sleeping. And then I remembered ranked choice voting, and I saw what a difference that could make. And so I've been volunteering with ranked choice voting ever since. And I fairly soon joined the local league as a way of working on ranked choice voting with some help. And we put on an event at the library, the Bellingham Library. We had 80 people attended, and we had Margaret Morales from Sightline Institute came up from Portland, and we also invited our auditor to talk. And we did a stand-up ranked choice voting election. Half of the people who were there, 40 people participated in that. And it's really helpful to do it in person because it's caucus style. It's like instant runoffs. And so it is, it's kinesthetic, it's visual, it's auditory, it's social, it's proprioceptive. It gets everybody. And people remember that from years ago. And people still tell me I should have been there. It was great. And of course I was. So let's see, I have some things to show you. Do you all see that? That's the end.
Yes.
This is my first time. No, actually, I am the presentation coordinator for Fairfield, Washington, as well as being in the league. And so it just works really, we work really well together. We cooperate quite a bit. And now I will share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so I'm Kit Mulliman. We're talking about messaging. And there we go. I'm trying to get to the next screen. As I said, we work with the league and Fairfield, Washington, work quite a bit together, and it's a good partnership. The state league is not like endorsing exactly ranked choice voting, but in the local leagues, we have a lot of support. So several years ago, Fair Vote Washington employed a polling organization to find out what voters in Washington were interested in, which of the benefits of ranked choice voting were most important to Washingtonians. And these three benefits are the ones that we talk about. Of course, there are so many benefits of ranked choice voting, but more options. Sean, I thought that was really interesting, the word choice being perhaps a problem. So maybe more options would be another way to say that. People wanted to vote for who they really wanted instead of strategizing. And people like me and many others are really concerned about negative campaigns. When we talk about ranked choice voting, it's really helpful to show them a ballot. This is the ballot that we have, the picture of the ballot that's on one of Fair Vote Washington's flyers. And it's really helpful to be able to point to that when we're talking. Simple, like I said, simple is really important. Like everyone has said, it's very important. So here's the picture that we used to use in our Zoom presentations on where ranked choice voting is used. This is off of Fair Vote National. So there are a lot of words on here that are not really necessary. And so we changed it to this. Let's see if I can get up there. I'm going to go back and forth if I can. And you see, it's just easier to read if you take out the non-essential words. Something that really helped me when I was is not my mouse. My mouse is not helping me. But something that really helped me is a video on YouTube called it helps you simplify your PowerPoints. It's called How to Avoid Death by PowerPoint. It's 20 minutes. I'll put the link in the chat when I'm done. Because the more simple you can make it, the easier it is for people to understand. The more simple you can explain it, the more simple people think it is. So people told us they wanted, let's see, come on, mouse. There we go. Our poll told us that voters want more real choices. And so we go over that point in our presentation. Our poll told us that people wanted to vote for their favorite candidates without strategizing. And we had a great example from Washington State, the 2020 Washington State presidential primary, where almost 400,000 people voted for candidates who dropped out, 25% of the vote. And political polarization is like the reason I want ranked choice voting. And it's the top motivation for a lot of people that I talk to. Our poll told us that people wanted an end to negative campaigning. So we talk about civil issues focused campaigns and candidates who campaign together. We have a story. Imagine that you're out campaigning for a candidate and you come to a house with your opponent's yard sign, one of your opponent's yard signs. Currently, you just skip that house, save your time, and go on to the next. But if it's a ranked choice voting campaign, you say, wait, I can ask for a second choice vote. And so you knock on the door, you have a conversation with the person inside and talk about the issues. And these jurisdictions in Washington have passed resolutions. They're our allies as well. They've passed resolutions saying that they support the local options bill. They want the choice to have ranked choice voting. Come on, mouse. And let's see, one of our challenges is explaining a proportional ranked choice voting. And I really liked hearing what Preston said. I think we might use that. And about elections. So unlike Donna, like we did have elections that with 4 or 5 candidates that were similar. And now we're trying now to have an election that has some polarization in it. So our polarizing candidates are scuba with the sharks or bathtub soaking. And I'll put the link for that in the chat as well. We use a different app called RCV Talent that I think you might enjoy. So I'm getting some feedback.
Yes,
from somebody.
Kit, I was just going to say, if anybody has just come on or has unmuted themselves, please mute yourselves.
So I see we're just about out of time. I'm going to put some links in the chat.
Yeah, let's make sure we get those, because that was great information. And I love your points about polarization too. And I know we want a few minutes if we can for questions, but I have to say something other than thank you to some things that I've seen come in the chat. And I just want to make sure everybody understands this. Our new national position as of 2020 does support ranked choice voting, and you can use that locally or statewide in your leagues. It does not use the words ranked choice voting, but it does support them, does support it. So please realize that. It might others, but it does support ranked choice voting for sure. And I know this is unusual, and people on the call may like jump up and down and be mad at me for wasting this time, but I would like to offer our speakers, if you have a dying question for one of the other speakers, please let us know. And otherwise, I'm going to open it up to Paula to ask any of the questions that came in.
Since we are so close on time, I'm going to go to this one. The League of Women Voters in Montgomery County, Maryland, are thinking about offering a ranked choice voting straw poll for the upcoming primary election. And they are asking the speakers, good idea? Any advice or thoughts about that?
So I will say I generally suggest staying away from actual candidates, especially if you don't currently have ranked choice voting. And if you're, if you're doing a straw poll of candidates for city council, and the city council may have to put some ranked choice voting on the ballot, you don't want to upset any of those candidates by them losing the mock poll or the straw poll.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
While we have you, Sean, a question for you specifically. What became of the perhaps alleged NAACP complaint that ranked choice voting is a form of voter suppression?
That was, I believe, an op-ed by the president of the New York State NAACP, Ms. Hazel Dukes. Interestingly enough, as she wrote that, she was also a sub-grantee of ours doing ranked choice voting education. So the NAACP does not have an official position on ranked choice voting. It really is branch by branch, state by state, that they make that determination.
So is that something, my question, is that something that we could propose to our local NAACP chapter in Sacramento?
Yes, and I actually think, I know your president very well and think she might actually like ranked choice voting. So I would love to have that conversation with you.
Great, okay, thanks. I don't see other questions that haven't been addressed, so we could open it up, but we are at.
We're right. We're right about there. And I'm sorry, but we did take a couple extra minutes on the speakers that did such a great job and just added a little bit of time in there to give us more information. So before saying goodnight, we want to give a big thank you to Diane, Preston, Vilya, Sean, Diane, Donna, and Kit. We really do thank you for being here and sharing some of these ideas. I got something from every single one of you. It was really terrific. So I'm going to say good night to everyone. Remind you to save the chat if you would like to save the chat so that you have some of the links that were provided. And I'll leave it open just a minute for everybody to do that. And just say, drive home safely from the comfort of your chairs. And other than that, don't forget to save the chat if you want it. And we should be good. Good
And
night.
please email Paula or Barbara. I put our email addresses in the chat. If you'd like to get on our list, if you're not on it, or if you would like to invite others who are interested in electoral reforms.
Great. Steve Chesson is saying he can't save the chat, so maybe Paula, you can share it with him. Okay.
You know, from time to time, I don't see the ability to do it either, but tonight I was able to, so
Yep.
I will.
There we got it. Thank you,
Can't be in
everybody,
full screen to do
for-
it. You
for
have to.
sharing.
Oh, thank you, Marcia. You need to be in full screen to do
You
it?
cannot be in full screen. If you get out of full screen, then at the bottom of, there's 3 little
Yeah.
dots to the right of the message place, and then you just say save chat.
Okay, I'm